So, G, what about the three Caballeros?
Oh man, so I was in the Disney store the other day and I saw merchandise for this film that was made in 1940 something called The Three Caballeros. So I bought it immediately. Nobody
Like
knows
the
the
three
film is that.
Musketeers of Disney?
It's kind of
Casually, you
like
were
that,
just
but
in the
they're like,
Disney store?
yeah, my girlfriend's really into Disney, so we recur there. And yeah. By the way, on that note, hello everyone. Today, we have a very special guest and good friend of mine. He is a very talented matte painter, an amazing artist, and he also just happens to own a company that you may have heard of called KitBash3D. His name is Maxx Burman.
Hey,
Hey,
Max.
guys.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I'm super curious to ask you just right off the bat, because most people probably know the name KitBash3D. It's become such a industry standard of quality of assets and stuff. What was your, like, how did you start the company? Or did you feel like there was an empty space that you needed to fill? Or did you always want to be a company owner? How did this come about?
I would like to go more to the beginning if we can. Like even like
All
how
right.
do you how do you start?
Where were you born?
Yeah, where were you born? I don't know you personally, so I'm super interested to hear about
Take us back to the beginning, Max.
Yeah, I think G and Tony aren't as interested because they were there for the whole thing. Yeah, I started.
Yes.
I started working as a matte painter around 2008, and got to work with both G and Tony at a few different studios. Yeah, mostly got my start in television, working at Zoic Studios, where I met G, and I think that's where I met you, Tony.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
From there,
That was like 2010, 2011, something like that.
Seems about right. I was an intern there in 2010, so could have been then.
Were you really?
Yeah. I was part of I was running around with tapes around Los Angeles, delivering final products and gathering assets and bringing it back to the studio. So.
He was making us coffee, Max.
Yeah, pretty much.
Huh. I don't even, probably that was around the same time, G. 2010 is probably when we were doing Pan Am or
Pan Am.
Once Upon a Time over there.
Yeah. Oh my God. 13, 14 years ago.
Yeah. G and I got real close during that because we never got to go home. So we were basically roommates for about a year because we were at the studio 7 days a week.
Yeah. Working till like 2, 3, 4 a.m. or just staying the night sometime. And
was that one of your first spots in the industry at Zoic Studios on those projects, or?
So I was an intern at Zoic also, 2008, 2009, also getting people coffee, although I was told back then that I was the worst intern they've ever had because I just wanted to paint. So I got myself booked up on jobs there as quickly as possible. And when they'd call me to do a coffee run, I'd have a coordinator or a producer go, "No, you can't stop him. We have a delivery tomorrow." And so I'd kind of skirt out of doing any of the coffee runs or the drive drop-offs. Except one, I did do one drive drop-off to Universal, which was so much fun because you get the pass to go on the back lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I got in, dropped the drive off, and then I took my car on the Universal Studios tour. I did the whole thing. But yeah, that's how I got my start. And then studio hopping. I worked at about 35 different studios over 10 years. Making my way from TV over to animation to feature film, commercials. Ran into G and Tony at a lot of those studios along the way. I think, we had a run where we went to like 3 or 4 studios in a row together, from Zoic to Sony to DD.
Yeah. There's been so many that it's hard for me to pinpoint like what year exactly which like project we were, but I do remember those runs for sure.
Yeah, I remember vividly being at Sony with you, and we were in the room where they announced that they were closing down Albuquerque.
And, yeah. Oh my God!
Like, I think I just got a call from DD, Florida. I'm going to go over there. And I was just like, man, you're about to go start a nomad life right here. very much.
You were working on Hotel Transylvania at the time. It's coming back to me. And then I think I was on The Amazing Spider-Man, circa 2012. Yeah. Good time.
Yeah, and I remember being at Framestore with Tony when you were doing your last little bit in the US. And you're like, after this project, I'm moving overseas.
Yeah, I was over there for in 2014, basically the whole year. I think like 13 to 15, basically, I was there. And I still really like that place. Little place in Culver City, a great office. Used to be like an airplane hangar. There was like a really big open space where I guess they used to hang these airplane wings because you need like to hang it up vertically, and had a big open area. It's really cool. And they had the door from the TV show Firefly. From I think it was that, or was that at Zoic? I'm not sure.
That was Zoic. Yeah.
Okay, then they had this other. I don't know what it is with these doors at these studios, but they had another door that was like this massive metal fire door that you could close at any point. It was pretty cool. But yeah, Zoic had the Firefly door. That's right.
So 2014, that was... Oh, sorry. That was when you did your King series? So, Tony?
Yeah, that's when I was doing the King series as well. Yeah, yeah. Actually, it's kind of a funny story, but they wanted to get me to do the series like kind of at Framestore, and I was like, actually, I'm gonna just do it to the side and put it on YouTube instead, which ended up being a pretty good decision.
Your time in Framestore was known as the Tony Lyons era. I heard that from Juan because he started after you left.
Ah, well, that's good. And Max had the Zoic era, or the era of Max. That was a nice place. I still remember good times at Zoic. It was very like friendly. Like even as an intern, I did work there at one point as a comper later on, right before Framestore. But I remember it being just kind of a fun place. They had I think they had that chef that always used to cook stuff. Is my memory serving right?
Oh,
they had somebody like always cooking stuff, and they would like have all these nice lunch meals and stuff.
Yeah,
I
forgot
so.
her name. She would be doing like ceviches for lunch and tacos on Fridays. Yeah, their kitchen was incredible.
It was super easy to gain weight there because of that.
Dude, they had one of the big like tubes of peanut M&Ms. You can just like turn the thing and the peanut M&Ms come out. I think I gained like 10 pounds and got addicted. I had to like kick the habit of peanut M&Ms. I became an addict.
I think I saw you putting your mouth underneath the...
I kept having to clean it as an intern. I was like cleaning up all the spit on the M&M thing.
Yeah, I remember they had like tuna fish that would come in like a bag. It looked like it's something an astronaut would have. So I used to call it space tuna.
Well, it has to last you, all the way through pilot season.
Oh my God, pilot season. You just brought more flashbacks.
This is like a PTSD podcast. So
yeah, right.
So, Max, I can't remember his name, but there was an amazing matte painter that was an older gentleman when I first started at Zoic, and they were in this small room. Is that who you were learning from? These two, maybe you remember his name because I can't remember, but he was like, he had learned from like Alfred Whitlock, the original like matte painter on glass. And this guy was like what's the word? Associate.
Apprentice.
Apprentice, thank you. It was an apprentice of him. And I just remember being in awe of this guy. And he had done like every movie since the 70s or something.
Yeah, Sid Dutton.
Dutton.
He was an oil and glass matte painter as well. Unbelievable. When I started at Zoic, I was kind of a jack of all trades and very much just like, hey, I'm trying to have a job right now. This is right after the writers' strike last time too.
Wow.
That was around 2009, and the housing market collapse, and so much uncertainty. So as a junior artist, you're just like, I'll do whatever the fuck you want me to do. Like, you want me to learn compositing, I'll learn compositing. I'm a character sculptor too, by the way, like whatever it
Anything
is.
you want.
So I was kind of just clinging on there of just like, hey, this is a tough time and I want to do whatever keeps me employed at this studio. And originally I thought I wanted to be a character modeler. I was doing like ZBrush sculpting. And Sid came into the studio and I was matte painting because there weren't any other matte painters there. So Sid joins Zoic and they show him to the matte painting department. He comes into the back room and it's just me and like 19 years old. He's like, this is the matte painting department? But he was great. He took me under his wing and really just, was giving me art history lessons, foundational art training, like all of this amazing stuff. And we just had a wonderful relationship where he really trained me to be a matte painter. And anytime I was like, I think I want to, eventually be a character sculptor, he was like, idiot, be a matte painter.
Did he sort of convince you to do it, or did you already have the passion from the beginning, or how did it come about, this path for you of doing environments and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely convinced me. I liked painting in general, but I always thought there was something really like, I don't know, something really special about ZBrush sculptors back then, because ZBrush was so new. It was like ZBrush 2.0, and it was, that was just such a cool new thing. But he really like taught me in matte painting, like showed me how amazing it is and the storytelling that you can do with environments. And also, a big part of it too was just, hey, there's not that many matte painters in the world. Like it's such a rare thing. And a big part of that is because, like you mentioned, Tony, for the last 100 years, matte painting has been the apprentice system. And so a matte painter only takes on a certain amount of apprentices in their career. And that's how the trade gets passed forward. So especially like 2008, 2009, like we hadn't moved to this digital paradigm. They weren't teaching matte painting in any schools. Like it was a very hard to learn thing, similar to like flame. Like the only way to learn it is to be in the room.
Wow.
Nice.
Wow.
So, how did it develop from there? Like, that's kind of the interesting part, I think. Like, once you are a matte painter, you're just working in many different studios. What happens?
Yeah, I always wanted to open my own studio. That was just, I guess, the ambitious part of me was just like, I want to be calling shots here. Or I want to, really a lot of it was like, I want to choose who I work with, was a big part of it. And so I opened a VFX studio in 2015 called Skyward VFX. We did a lot of projects, about 50 projects in our first year. And most of it was matte painting centric work. And we got to the end of the year and looked at our numbers. Like we didn't make any money this year. And it was like, how is that even possible? So after a year, it was just so exhausting. That was probably the hardest I ever worked in my life. Like, I was living in a studio apartment that looked like like I was basically, it was empty. It was just like an empty studio apartment because I never was home. I spent all my time at the studio 7 days a week, 14, 16 hours a day for a full year. And at the end of the year, it was just, I don't think we can keep doing this. So we closed down the studio. I joined Elastic as an art director there, was leading the design teams. And that's when I started to study business. I tried initially to figure out what the hell happened with the VFX studio, of how it's possible to have done so much work and to not have made money. And so that really was kind of the transition point where I started to ease out of matte painting itself and art directing and really start to study the business. And then started KitBash3D. That's like the cliff notes of my career.
So what
it's
did you...
amazing.
Go ahead, G. Go ahead.
It's just amazing that you saw I think VFX in general is just, it's a hard thing to make a profit off of. We've seen it with so many companies, big, medium, small, all having a similar struggle. So you went and you made something that kind of as an asset just generates itself. It generates its own income and it has residuals because people keep buying your product, right?
Yeah, the big kind of one of the big learnings I had was having a client is a really tough thing, just in general. And if your client has a client and they have a client, the more clients and layers there are, the less autonomy you have, the less decisions you get to make and the harder it is to make a profit because you have so many layers in between you and where the dollars are coming from. It's a really, really tough thing. Some VFX studios can do it, and they do it really, really well. Like, clearly, you guys all work at studios that are massive, and they've figured out the business model. But for me, that it wasn't able to figure it out at that stage. And, after running Skyward, realized, like, I don't think this is the thing I want to go figure out.
So you think a lot of it was kind of cutting out the middleman of you want less clients, you want a direct access because maybe somebody's misinterpreting notes or something, and just getting directly to the source of it? Is that what you learned?
I learned a ton, but I'll say that when Banks, my co-founder, and I started our company, initially our company was called Fuzzy because we didn't know what we were going to do. So it was a little fuzzy what it was going to be. And the thing that brought us together initially, we had known each other for 10 years at that point. We'd worked together in commercials, and he was on the production side. And we had kind of come to this point where after 10 years in the industry, we felt like we hadn't earned the ability to be trusted to just do the thing we know how to do really well. It was like one of those things where I'd be sitting next to a director working on a movie, and they'd be telling me, how I should be painting. And it was like, wait a second, like, we have two very different skill sets here. Like, I've trained for a decade to become a senior painter, and you've trained for all this time to become a great storyteller. So the way I see this is like, trust me to do the painting, and I'll trust you to let me know what the right story we're trying to tell is. Mm-hmm. And that level of trust, of just trusting someone to do what they do best. So we both kind of realized this point of like, when is someone just going to let us do the thing we know how to do really well? And so we thought, what if we just started a company where basically we'll enable each other and inspire each other to do the things we do best. And if we can do that for each other, maybe we can do that for a team. And so really we started with the company culture in mind first. And out of that, it kind of guided a lot of the decisions we made. And early on, we had great companies coming to us to do projects, more on the marketing agency side. And it was like, well, we can't do that, because if we take on a client right now, then they're going to dictate this. And so our initial kind of mission was to create without permission. And then the other side of that is we wanted more of a life balance. Like, we were so burnt out after 10 years where we didn't want to work late nights. We didn't want to work weekends. We wanted to build a life outside of our careers, which is another thing you give up when you have a client where all of a sudden they're dictating the time frame. So that was kind of the genesis of that. And then we kind of had to evolve from there and say, okay, well, what are we actually making and selling here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Like, so would you say like the whole first stage of the company was completely organic and just figuring out like different possibilities? I'm super interested in that specific part. Like, how do you get to decide the path for the thing you're making, and what informs that, and how you change and morph it?
Yeah, well, at that time, the indie game scene was just starting to become like a mainstream idea that anyone could self-publish. And I had been making a game on the side, kind of in like my mornings before work and on weekends. And so when we started Fuzzy, it's like, well, I have this game and it's pretty close to, being ready. And I was going to go out to publishers. What if we self-published it or created a publishing company? And so we started a publishing company, and that was kind of the initial start. And we put out this game with Nintendo called Sleep Tight, and went and did the whole run of it, all the way from developing the game to the press tours to working with Twitch and Microsoft and Nintendo and doing all the events. And we got to E3, and it was the first Unreal game to port to Nintendo Switch. So it was the year Switch came out. And we walk into And we were going to release in September. So this is June. And And right as soon as we walk in through the door with our demo in hand, we get like an announcement on our phones that they just announced a new Mario game and a new Pokemon game on the same week that our game was coming out. We're like, well, we're about to get crushed. So we didn't even go to E3. We turned around and walked out, and we went to the coffee shop across the street. We're just like, shit, well, we can't put out the game this year anymore because now we're into fall season. We're competing with AAA games. And so at that coffee shop, I was like, I've had this idea I've been toying around with as a map painter or as a concept artist. I need 3D models as I'm working, but going to these open marketplaces, it's really hard to find anything that's, production quality or is consistent styles or genres. And honestly, if someone else had made this, I would have been grateful for them. But I've just been waiting for this thing for a long time to just have a resource, especially as a freelancer when you don't have the resources of a studio available to you. And so we said, well, maybe we can build that and build a couple of these kits, and that could carry us over so that we could survive another year before putting out the game. So that was in June, and in September we launched KitBash, and we launched with 4 kits. And really the idea was, can we make enough money to sustain the few people we were working with and the costs of publishing a video game?
Oh. So KitBash was basically conceived in that cafe that day.
It was.
At least the concept of it. Do you ever go back to that cafe similar to how couples reenact their first dates?
I couldn't even tell you which cafe it was.
That's where the magic happened. There's no anniversary going on there.
Wherever E3 was across the street, I guess, right?
Yeah, somewhere in LA, somewhere in downtown. But I think we walked for a bit to kind of like, shit, what are we going to do? Like, we got to walk this off. So we kind of went on the downtown walk to just kind of like come to terms with the fact that we weren't putting out a game anymore, or that year.
Oh, this is great.
It's kind of crazy.
It's amazing how different events lead to like different things that just bloom. Maybe you don't realize it in the time, but later on you see like it fester and leads you to a different path or an amazing path in your case.
Yeah, you never know, right? Like it's so wild. I think I can, I don't know your background as much, Adrian, but same with G and Tony of like, seeing what the last 15 years and the journeys that it's taken all of us into these places that I think we could have never imagined before.
Those points of inflection are like just spread in random places and random times, and they all like mark such a weird and random path that it's pretty crazy if you think about it. Like and like making the connection now. Like I was wondering, how does a matte painter like launch a company for 3D assets and not a different thing? And it makes like total sense that you're like actually the person that needs the 3D assets to work, and then you spot the hole in the terrain. And I think that's amazing.
I saw that matte painting was going 3D, but probably around 2014 actually. Was like, hey, wait a second. As a matte painter, you're becoming more of a generalist, and you have to handle more and more complicated camera moves and things like that. We were doing all the nuke projections for that. It's like, well, this is going to move full 3D real soon. What's wild is when I stopped matte painting and started KitBash, I think about 2 or 3 years later is when ILM finally closed or renamed the matte painting department into the 3D generalist department. It was like, now it's complete, and it's kind of sad to see because there's so much legacy around matte painting, but there's not really, matte painting departments anymore. Like, this has become a 3D centric world.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, I noticed they still have the word like DMP, digital matte painting, but they're always doing all kinds of environments rendered first, and then maybe touching it up or so. But you rarely see the giant Photoshop file like that you have. I think maybe they're still doing it, but at least they're mainly, I guess, doing the 3D stuff. Huh?
Yeah, there's a lot in lower budget stuff, I think, but the more you go into AAA things, like, most environments, I have the feeling that need to be built in a more robust way that allows for more iteration, and I don't know, all the things you already know, I guess.
Yeah, even if you're doing 2D, you're probably starting with a 3D render.
Yeah. Have you ever always been on the artistic side of things? Like, because it's probably the most like artistic thing I can imagine, because it really delves into almost traditional painting in a lot of ways. You need to know a lot about art, more so than maybe some of the other fields where it's very, very niche. But have you always been just into this art field and creative and conceptual artwork and such?
Yeah, I'm a third generation artist, so on both sides.
Wow.
So, yeah, I joke that if I had been a doctor or a lawyer, I would have been a disappointment to my family. But both my parents are makeup effects artists.
Wow.
My mom grew up above an art store that her parents owned, and they were kind of fine artists. And then my dad's dad was a prop maker in the film industry. And so, yeah, it runs deep. I grew up in my parents' studio, always sculpting, drawing, painting. So yeah, I think I rebelled against it as a teenager, which is hilarious to think about rebelling against having an art career. But yeah, it's always been a very, very big part of my life.
So did you get involved in the actual asset build, the building of the assets for the company?
Yes, yeah, for sure. I think I'm not a modeler. I'm not a texture artist. But I do want to make sure that the things that we're building are hitting a quality that I would have used in my career. And so, it's kind of evolved over the last going on 7 years now, where in the beginning it was like very involved managing the day-to-day of freelance 3D modelers. We've had several head of kits over the years, and the team has grown and grown and grown. And at this stage, I like to look at everything before it goes out the door, but that's about as much involvement as I usually get. And concepts we have a team of concept artists who like design all of our worlds and kits. And I like to see the designs as they progress before they go into production, and, just at this stage, give a thumbs up because our artists are killer, and just be like, yeah, that looks awesome. Let's go build that.
So cool.
Do you find yourself more busy these days than when you owned a VFX company?
Yeah. Well, it's a different kind of busy. In a VFX, when I was doing Skyward, a lot of my time was painting. And so, yes, I was busy because I had to be there painting. But also there's something about this, like, same thing, I guess, in compositing. You have headphones on. You can kind of like listen to music or podcasts or talk to someone while you're doing it. So it's kind of this weird, like, yes, you're busy, but you also have a lot of mental space. My job today is 90% meetings. And so there's no kind of downtime. It's back to back to back. And usually it's like start the day and go. And it's a lot of context changing, where I might be in a engineering meeting and then immediately switch into a marketing meeting and switch into an operations or a finance meeting. And so it's, there's not a lot of like rest time for your brain. So it feels a little busier, but my hours are a lot smaller.
My days in supervision, when I had to jump from meeting to meeting as well, I found these days very exhausting. And like the term you said, mental space, that really like puts a good label on it. So do you have things that you do that like keep you fresh or invigorated, I guess, in between meetings or after meetings, before you start the day, when you end the day?
Yeah, KitBash has a very strong culture built on a lot of the things that were important to Banks and I before there was a KitBash, when we were first saying, hey, I wish there was a place that existed that was like this to work at. And one of our main principles is the idea that stress plus rest equals growth. And so stress, we want to, give it our all. We want to work really hard. We also need to rest. If you don't have that recovery time, you're just going to burn out. And combining those two gives you the longevity, and over time you're going to grow by having that. And so, yeah, for me, it's less about in the day finding breaks, because I just don't really have breaks in the day. But I don't work late and I don't work weekends, and so finish the day, like to, cook with my fiance. We live in Portland, which is just like a beautiful place to go to the park, go on walks, go on a hike, go to great meals. And so it's a lot of just totally disconnecting so that we can recover and have the energy to hit it hard when it's, game time.
Mm.
I'm
Nice.
feeling quite identified with how you're going more into like just meeting mode and have to switch context constantly. And in my personal case, like coming from VFX supervision, which is like project based and basically like giving feedback, and you're like in the thing. And then for some reason, I got into the head of VFX part of the work, which I thought it would be just VFX supervision, but for all projects. But it was not that. It was just turning into a meeting machine and just being able to talk to everyone all the time. And I found like, some unexpected learnings, but also some unexpected, fun I had to learn things that I was just not expecting. But I'm also personally missing some things that I had in the creative thing. How are you, like, I guess, are you still like missing some areas that you wish you would be doing in such a creative position that you are now like forced to take a step back and just overview stuff or talk to people?
Yeah, it is wild to think like I do not really have a creative job anymore, right? I do not do any art for a living anymore. But I love my job. Like this is the most fun job I've ever had. I'd say the thing I probably miss the most about being a painter is actually all the headphone time you get. Like all the time when you're just rocking away on a painting and you have 10 hours to ingest knowledge and information. Like I'd go through, 1 or 2 books, audiobooks a day. Like the amount of information you can ingest. And in my last year of it, I was doing MIT and Stanford put all their classes online for free. So I basically got my master's in business while I was painting just because I watched every single lecture in class that they had on YouTube for free while I was painting. And so, that's probably the thing I miss the most is just that time of how much information you're able to ingest and what an amazing opportunity that is for professional artists.
It's like focus time that lasts many hours. And you were mentioning like each of these meetings that you're having now is sort of a different field of your brain, and you're constantly switching. You have to be on your feet, on your toes, and I could imagine that nice like you're in the zone, just learning and digesting stuff, like a good feeling that you might miss. Do you ever do it on the side, or do you consider it kind of like, oh, this is work on the side, or do you try to do other things?
I haven't painted in maybe 3 or 4 years. But at my peak as a matte painter, I was doing north of 200 paintings a year. And so you do that for 10 years. I think this is one of the things where, like, unfortunately, I got burned out too many times with painting to the point where, like, I don't want to do it anymore. I think that's, like, one of the real dark sides of this industry is that that's possible. And a lot of that was just me. Like, I would take on a full-time job and I'd take on a side job and I'd have a third job on top of that. And I was just hustling paintings and doing it nonstop. So, like, part of that is on me. Part of that is on the industry too, because there are some studios where it's just like you go there and you are I think the analogy I heard was it's the nicest sweatshops in the world, where it's just like you can have whatever you want. You want a filet mignon, whatever it is, you just can't leave. And I think after that many years of sustaining that, it's kind of over for me on that. But for now, who knows what will happen in the future. But it's also a driving force for me at KitBash to create a workspace that allows artists to have longevity in their careers and make sure that the artists at KitBash love what they do and continue to love doing it for as long as possible.
It's sort of something I'm noticing as we kind of talk to guests that are maybe further on in their careers. So like once you start leveling up or going up and up, you stop kind of producing the art, but what you're doing is enabling other people to do art instead. And so it's like you're kind of like touching many other people that would do more work than you could do by yourself, but you're helping them to achieve more, which is pretty interesting. It's like you're exponentially affecting the workspace or something like that, you know?
Completely. I mean, to Adrian, your point of like head of VFX, thinking like head of VFX is just doing the project management, but with more projects. It's not that dissimilar. Here, at KitBash, I think right now we probably have between 40 or 50 projects going on right now. And so that's, there's kind of a wider lens of looking at how's the whole slate of it. And rather than looking at what needs to get done today or this week or this month, it's just zooming back more and more of what's 2024 and 2025 looking like, and are those tracking and on pace for where we want to be in 2028, and what are the things we need to do over the next 2 years in order to enable these things. And so it's just zooming out further and further.
And I guess like the more you zoom out, the more it changes the nature of what you're looking at, right? Like instead of looking at specific projects or specific creative things, you're looking, I guess, more at trends or at like, yeah, I'm really intrigued by all that. What are you like learning in the last years that you were completely not expecting in terms of what you're learning to do?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think every year is learning because for us, KitBash has doubled in size every year for the last 6 years. So like every year my job is completely different than it was the year before, and I'm looking at a wider time horizon. So there's always learning, and there's learning in every department too, of like, you could choose any team right now and I'm learning a ton from them, whether it's, finance or legal or people operations or, engineering. I've learned more engineering than I ever thought I could. There's always learnings. And I think, that's also, as you zoom out, I think this is one of the challenges that happens. There needs to be trust, right? And this is kind of goes back to the initial idea of like, why doesn't someone just trust me to do the painting? I'm a fucking good painter, and just let me do that. And I think that is the trust, right? Because like, maybe I don't see what's happening in the day-to-day, so I need to trust the others to make the decisions on the days or the weeks. And I need to build the trust to allow for people to trust me to say, hey, let's have a conversation about it because I'm seeing something 2 years from now that maybe you're not looking at. And so I think that's the thing that evolves more and more, is that, as I get a little further away from some areas of the company on the day-to-day, there's some areas I'm still very involved, but as I get further away, learning that this is where we need to build trust to make sure we can both work in tandem in alignment towards the same direction from two different point of views.
How many people do you have at KitBash now?
We are, I think, just north of 60 right now.
Nice. So out of all the kits you've done this far, that KitBash has done, which I imagine, is it like, how many? Was it like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60? It's probably pretty high, isn't it?
Yeah, we've done 100 kits, just about, and we're putting out 3 kits a month now.
Oh, wow.
Nice. So what's your all-time favorite kit?
Oh, it's funny. This happens, different people throughout this whole time. There's been like kits that it resonates with someone on the team, and then they become the like person to push it forward and shape it. And so like there's some kits that just like have a special place in different people's hearts, and they got way more involved on that kit. For me, there's a kit called Gaia, and that was the one that sick. At that stage we had an awesome head of kits and a great team, and I wasn't as on the day-to-day of it, but that kit was just like, I want to be more involved in this. We ended up spending about 9 months building that one. We got to the finish line after 6 months. For context, typically a kit takes us about 8 weeks. So,
oh wow,
This one took a long time. It was a challenge, and we got to the end of it, and it didn't really do what I wanted it to do. So we went back to concepts and reconcepted it and rebuilt it. And, now it's, I think, one of my favorite kits we've ever built.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, this kind of leans into a question that I had for you. You're doing a lot of really creative conceptual work, idea generation, basically. Pretty obvious question. Have you had sort of creative block, writer's block before? But more importantly, what kind of stuff do you do to get out of that? Or do you have kind of a recipe to kind of move past this and find inspiration, whether it's like traveling with a camera or going on a super long walk or something? How do you generate all these crazy ideas, or where do they come from? I guess where's your muse coming from?
Yeah. Well, I'll split this in two, because I don't come up with the kits we create. Not all of the kits we create, right? That's a team effort, and there's very little creative block at KitBash. It's just there's always a list of people's ideas for kits. So yeah, that's never been a problem for us. When I was an artist or a designer, though, I treated inspiration as a part of my job. It was just, you don't get the excuse to go have a day of, I had creative block, right? When you're a professional artist or a concept artist, designer, art director, map painter, whatever it is, you get your assignment and you have to turn around a painting, and you have to be able to do that day in and day out. And so a lot of it is making sure that you're filling yourself with inspiration so that you can consistently perform. If you do have creative block, you kind of just got to push through. It doesn't matter. You got to deliver something. So it's never been a stopper for me. But I think that it's because so much energy went into making sure that I was always ingesting art in every different type and format and looking for inspiration, and then logging it and having it in the hopper for when the right project.
So just always saving stuff and always looking at the right sources and getting inspiration and just pulling from this pool that you're always gathering.
Yeah, and traveling, right? Traveling is such a great one, where when you get a project, a lot of what I would do is think about what's the moment in the story and where in my life have I had that emotional experience or felt like I was in that situation. Even if it's a fantastical situation, it's a happy, it's sad, it's scary, it's exciting, whatever that emotion is, and go, where in my life did I feel that emotion, and why did that feel that way? And then being conscious and aware in your travels of what does this feel like? And what does this sound like? And what are all of the different senses that come here, so that you can pull on that for your projects?
Do you send your team off to shoot some locations and get some inspiration for things, or get some set photos, or this kind of thing? Do you hey, go to the Arctic and go hike for in Antarctica for a week or something, or how do these sort of things
go to a
come
nude
up?
beach in Spain?
Yeah.
But we don't. And I think a lot of it is because our team is so international, and our team is always sharing, they'll go and explore something, and on our Slack or whatever, they'll always post, hey, I was at this place and I took these references of this cool texture over here. And they're just always sharing that stuff. But I feel like we have so much coverage just from where our team is, and we don't often feel the need to actually go somewhere to go find that inspiration, but we encourage taking time off and traveling.
Right. You're pulling from everyone's experience.
How did you go to the remote work situation? Was it a big difference through COVID, or were you already in a really remote configuration?
No, we were already remote. I mean, we had an LA office. It was pretty small, but most of our team's always been remote. Mainly because Banks and I didn't want to stay in LA. And so we were kind of afraid to establish too big of a studio in LA. We knew we wanted to eventually leave. And then I started doing talks in different countries at different art festivals. And I got exposed to just some of the most incredible talent, realizing that there's amazing talent everywhere in the world. And so we wanted to be able to work with the best people regardless of their location. So those two things combined, we just set out to be remote first from the beginning.
Wow. So you've had a lot of high-profile clients, from J.J. Abrams to ILM to, I mean, Lord knows how many. Which one is the most fun to hang out with?
Oh, it's funny. I grew up in Hollywood, so it never was I don't know. I never had stars in my eyes. So none. I think is the answer.
Hear that,
There's
JJ?
the reason I left Hollywood. It's because, the most fun to hang out with, honestly, is the KitBash team.
Oh. It's gotten wholesome real quick.
It's the truth. Honestly, it's who I want to spend all my time with, is the people who work here. It's, they're the most fun people.
Do you have any kind of fun story or favorite story from any of the many clients that you've had? I heard you worked with Beeple. He's kind of always pulling stuff. He's an artist that does like one asset a day basically, and sells a bunch of I think NFTs and stuff. But he's become like a really good artist, just making constant content. And I think he's using a lot of KitBash to do so, right?
Yeah, he is. Mike has been he's been a good friend, and it's been awesome to just see his whole journey. I'll say with him, because he's been using kits since inception, and we've always kind of gone back and forth. I'll tell you a funny one with that. My mom decided to start doing everydays, and Beeple would cheer her on and be sending her messages of like, day 100, like cheered it on. And when she finished her year, he sent her a very sweet message. But he's been a wonderful, I don't know, that just a cool journey to get to be alongside and just get to watch what he's done with this whole thing. It's mind blowing. And he really called it, like, a lot of people can look at that and say like, oh, right place, right time. He called it. Like, we were at a bar in LA 5 years ago, and I was like, I think he had just hit his 10 years of everydays. And I was like, okay, well, 10 years, are you going to keep doing this? Or why are you going to keep doing this? And he told me exactly what he was going to do. He said, I'm going to do to digital art what Banksy did to street art, and this is how I'm going to do it. And I was like, that's wild. And then 3 years later, he becomes the third highest selling living artist in history. So
a lot of dedication. I mean, talking about not stopping from a writer's block or anything like that. Like, this guy's just pumping out stuff. And like you said, you just kind of work through it. And it's not that at any point he made like a masterpiece. It's like his skills over the 10 years of doing it every single day is like honing and honing and honing. It's quite interesting to have that kind of commitment and that passion to do that.
That's honestly, I'd say that's the most exciting thing for me, is getting to watch people's artistic journeys. And then if KitBash can play some small part in that journey, then, it's very, very fulfilling.
That's amazing too. Like, one thing I wanted to ask as well is like, you've had some like actual challenges through your journey with KitBash, and not all has been like super amazing, or has it been completely naturally flowing in the positive direction constantly? Because has there been any challenge that you would like to comment, or something that you remember that you've learned from?
So many, every week, every friggin' week, right? Like, this isn't a smooth journey. I think it's an endurance race. And it's about having grit and solving the next challenge when the challenge comes up. But we can look back at it now and be like, hey, everyone knows KitBash. That's awesome right now. And I don't think that's true, by the way, Tony, that everyone knows what KitBash is.
You'd be surprised. It's I think everybody pretty much knows it. At least if you're in environments, or if you're, the producer's trying to look for assets for the next show or something like that. Where can we go? Yeah, but it's quite known. But
it's been a long journey to get to here. And, we launched, and I think we were like, oh, we're going to sell thousands of dollars in the first day. And I think we got our one sale and like $200 for the first day. And we were like, oh God, we're in for it. Like, this is going to be a longer journey than we all anticipated. It's been a fulfilling journey and I love doing this journey, but it's not an easy journey by any means.
I mean, I think you said something before, which was that you and your partner kind of moderate the quality. And I think that's the most important thing. Is like I saw on the KitBash website, there's like a blog with some stories of like different people doing it, and also kind of how-to videos or these learning videos. And it's like the quality is there, and everyone knows it specifically for the quality, And that's grown over the years, and you're just known as like this monolith of like, at least we're gonna get a good set, and that's really, I think, important. And you can't get that on day one, right? You gotta build that up through the years.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is about building the culture of the company. That's one of the things I'm most proud of is we have a lot of people. It's very common here where like I'll final approve a design and the designer will go, no, I could make it better. And they'll do another round or two after it's approved. And I think that's across the board. Like, it's this commitment to excellence that everyone on this team has, and they have a lot of pride in what we do here. And so I think, I guess overseeing the quality of it, really it's like, I want to oversee the quality of the people that we hire and the culture that we have at this stage, because they're going to be overseeing the quality of either their own work or their team's work. And it just builds on top of itself.
I wanted to ask a question about sort of when you started. I guess you did you have a specific industry niche in mind? And for example, maybe you were thinking specifically DMP or environments for film or television or something, but then you saw the kits being used in games, or was there always sort of an even level? And with the emergence of like the virtual production that we were kind of mentioning before, have you noticed like more demand for this stuff? Because, if you're on set, you need something quick to kind of visualize different environments while you're kind of filming. And maybe they need something, a demand suddenly came out of nowhere for the kits. Have you noticed any trend over the years?
Yeah, I think Banks and I, throughout our friendship before we started KitBash, we were always talking about the metaverse. Both of us had read Snow Crash and Ready Player One, and we're always talking about the 3D internet. And we said, in 2025, that's when we'll have this 3D internet, and that 3D content is going to become more and more consumer facing. We always thought that was going to be based in game engines. And so that's why, building a video game was our kind of first foray together into it, to learn Unreal and learn game engine technology. When we had started KitBash, we had made a game and we were publishing it, clearly working in visual effects in that industry. But the idea was that assets are going to be a thing that's going to be a blocker for 3D content. And let's be software agnostic here and hardware agnostic. Banks was working in VR as well at the time. And so we kind of just saw like, hey, there's a lot of things here, but this is going to be an industry that is going to take 10 years before it even exists. Who can we serve today? And it was the creators of movies and video games, in the hopes that they're going to be the ones that will expand or inspire kind of the everyday creator to create 3D content. And so virtual production, we knew that game engine technology was going to come to film, but maybe we didn't know how. But we knew that we needed to make sure that our stuff was working in game engines. Individual artists and 3D influencers was something we expected to happen, but we didn't know that NFTs were going to be a thing. Had a little bit of a clue because of our relationship with Beeple for years, of like, oh, what are you working on? Oh, that's kind of interesting. I think that's going to pop. But we've been very steadfast. Like, we haven't ever pivoted to headlines. We've kind of known the direction that we wanted to go since the beginning, and we've been heading in that direction with micro pivots, but nothing like stop everything. We're going to go do this because it's in the headlines.
Mm-hmm.
It seems easy now to see how things are evolving, but like 10 years ago, it must have taken so much vision to, it was not so obvious for me at least.
I feel very, very, I don't know, grateful that everything is unfolded the way we thought it would. It's kind of been surreal to just watch it step by step every year, just be like, yep, that's exactly what we saw.
Nice. Is there anything you would change if you were to go back in time and restart like this from this moment of the decision? Not about the decision, but about how you build the thing and how you develop the company.
I'd be terrified to change anything.
Yeah. No, well, you can reset. You can come back when
It's
you
like
want.
messing with time.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that about my entire life, my entire career. I'm like, I have no regrets because God forbid I did anything different and I didn't get to be where I am today. I don't want to mess with anything. I'm really happy here.
Yeah. Whatever doesn't work, at least you learn something that takes you this. Super cool.
It's exciting to know that you mentioned that you were dabbling in VR and stuff. I can't imagine how cool it would be to actually virtually walk through a KitBash kit.
It's very cool.
Must be cool to see that. Yeah.
Of course you've done it.
There's one thing to see it rendered a couple hours of frame or something, and it's another thing to just I can view anywhere right now, and it's all in Unreal or Unity or something, and it's looking realistic right away. It's really cool.
Just scrolling through your kits now, I mean, something like Elysium or Cyberpunk, walking through that in VR would be insane.
Max just has its own worlds in the metaverse ready for when it's...
Yeah.
It's been pretty cool, the getting to explore it in all these different mediums. Right now we have our partnership with Fortnite, and we're building KitBash3D Fortnite kits, and that's just a whole other wild thing. We're running around a kit as a Fortnite character on a mobile phone, and it's photoreal, and you're like, this is wild. We are so close to this metaverse idea from a technology perspective. It's right. We're right on the doorstep from it.
I've got a pivotal question here about AI. Of course, it's a very hot topic, but do you see it as a threat? Do you see it as a helper to what you're doing? Because you're probably one of the people that knows the most about how it affects you in your business right now. How are you feeling about it as a KitBash company, and are you excited about it, or is it problematic of taking away some of the hard work that people have been doing?
Yeah, I think we're in such early days of AI. It's the Wild West. We're still trying to figure it out. There's fear, there's excitement, there's all of the emotions that come when something changes and is different. I think it's ultimately it's going to be a huge unlock for us. And I think KitBash is in a unique position with it, right? I think that's what I always look at with these kind of turning point changes is well, what position do we want to be in, or what position are we in to implement something so powerful? I think for the artists of the world, there's a bit of a challenge right now, right? There's the copyright infringement that's happening in AI. Also, AI image generation and video generation is not built for professional artists. Mm-hmm. It's actually very much to give those tools to people who aren't professional artists. When I think about prompt-based image generation, it's well, if I had the friggin' words for this, then I probably wouldn't have invested 20 years in learning how to paint it. I've learned a different language because that was the language I needed to express myself or express a story. And that's in visuals. It's in color and composition and light and all of these things. It's not in text. And so I don't think we've seen as artists the tools yet for us to do the things that, that empower us or speed us up. And I think that's where KitBash's unique position is we serve creators. And so looking for the opportunities where we can take AI not to threaten artists, but instead, how do we empower artists by giving them, more speed or remove the monotony of the things they want to do?
Has anyone ever sent you like an AI generated image that looked like it may have taken something from a KitBash image?
No one sent it to me. They probably wouldn't send it to me. For us, our library is all, ours, and we try to lock down copyright or have copyright protections around it to make sure that we're not training data models. If we're going to train a data model, or have an AI generator, we want to use our own data model and make sure that that's exclusive to us. But also, like, we're in the world of 3D. That's 3D generation. It's not here yet. It's a lot more complicated than 2D generation, but we're not there yet. And we're watching it closely, and we're working with a lot of companies who are moving forward there just to see what's the unlocks. But I go back to, like, text prompts is not the way to serve our community or the people who use KitBash.
I guess apart from generative asset generation, you must also be looking at NeRFs and Gaussian splats and all of that, right, for environments.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, there's so much here for us. Smart assets are a big thing that we're, heavily invested in. A lot of the things that we've been working on over the years is interoperability, because KitBash assets have to support, every pipeline and every software. And so we have a lot of those tools, and that's where a lot of our focus goes into. And we've been building software for 6 years to help push interoperability forward. And then looking at, okay, well, where can we use AI to power that even further?
That's amazing.
I can imagine a future where you train all of your kits on your own personal AI, and you guys, let's do something different, and just type it in. Castlevania's like whatever. No, but I think it's a long way from that. Just like perfectly making a kit for you that has everything that you need on the specific niche concept that you're thinking of. But yeah, you never know in the future if that's going to be a thing.
Yeah, if that's ever a thing, I guess then the build the actual environment for me would also be the thing at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah. I also, like, there's an analogy I use quite a bit. In the 1940s or 50s, when they had instant cake mix, when that first came out, I don't know if you guys know this analogy, but they had just add water and you make a cake, and no one bought it. They hated it. And then they took out the powdered egg. So it was pour the mix, crack an egg, and add water, and now it makes the cake. And that's what we've been using ever since. And you don't need to crack the egg. They can put it in the cake mix. But it was the idea that people wanted to have some semblance that they were taking action to make the thing come into a reality. It was that sense of ownership they got from cracking the egg. And so that's a lot of what we talk about at KitBash is we need to make sure we don't take away the sense of ownership. We could deliver, Gaia or Cyberpunk as a fully built out level or a world, but then there's no creative change or autonomy that someone has to go and make it their own. And so we're always looking at that. And I think with AI generation, same thing. It's you want to take action to make it yours.
Yeah, absolutely.
Reminding me a lot of the motion brush, is it, from Runway? That now you can paint on the image and it moves right where you painted. It's like, oh, now you made it.
Now you've directed
exactly.
it.
That's the egg.
Yeah, that's exactly.
That's the egg.
Oh, super cool. One topic I wanted to bring up. Oh man, this is looking like an interview, but you have so much super valuable information, man. Any tips you would give people in the industry that are looking to embark on their own entrepreneurial journey in some way?
Sure. If you're coming from the creative industry specifically, I would say stop overvaluing the creative industry. Like, this is one of the hard things, right? As a creative person, you're like, well, clearly the magic is in the creativity. And it's like, well, no, it's not. Like, and it's a really tough thing it's a tough pill to swallow. The example I give is the Lance Armstrong bracelets. You're like, was that a brilliant product? Was that just like beautifully designed, the most creative thing? It was like a rubber band, but great branding, great marketing, and hugely successful because of the branding and marketing.
I personally felt stronger when I wore it.
Same.
You didn't?
So I think that's the tough pill to swallow of like, you could make the best thing ever, but if no one sees it and no one knows about it, it's really hard to succeed with a business endeavor. And so we kind of have to bring that down in terms of our value structure and say, hey, it's really important to me, for example, that KitBash has great design and that we make great products. Let's make sure that what's equally important is that we're financially sound, that our operations run smoothly, that our marketing department has our channels on lockdown. Like those other parts of it that we often brush under the rug here as a creative person, that's going to become more and more of your focus as you embark on any sort of entrepreneurial journey.
Is that sort of like putting your ego aside and looking at more data and saying like, is this working from a numbers point of view, from a statistical point of view, and not just, I think it's great, so it's probably going to work? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, for sure. And yes, marketing has the data perspective. Marketing also has the human perspective of understanding how to talk to someone, how to communicate with someone, how to connect with someone. But for sure, it's like, take your assumptions and understand that they're your assumptions. And perfect example of this, we released Cargo this year, our asset browser. And I was like, let's just make it for Windows. Like it's going to extend it by 6 months if we make it for Windows and Mac. And I was like, how many 3D artists are using Mac? Like I use a Windows, everyone I know uses a Windows. So we made it for Windows. I was so wrong. Like it was one of the dumbest decisions I've ever made, right? Like there's a ton of Mac users who use 3D and now we're working on Mac and it's our top priority. But that was my assumption and I thought I was right about it. And turns out like I didn't know and should have actually listened to and talked to more people outside of, what I believe.
And getting to great insights from well, I guess one is like test your assumptions all the time, right? And not just think you're going with an idea and wait for it to succeed, like the $200 first sell thing. And also loving how you like looking at the long term from the beginning and not just where you want to be in a month, but like more of the inertia that you want to get and how that's going to position you for the next step and all of that. I think that's super valuable.
Can you talk a little bit more about Cargo? Is it sort of like if you're in Unreal, you pull up a panel, it's like plug in and you browse some assets and drag it in, or is that sort of what it is? Or
it's a standalone software, but it connects to any other 3D software. So almost like Spotify, like you pull it up and you have all of your assets in there. And then it's, one click to any 3D software. So if you're using Unreal or Maya or 3ds Max, it'll load up whatever assets you need.
That's great.
Right in there.
Yeah, I can't wait for the Mac release because I'm one of the guys with the Mac.
I think that's
you
the
and a
first
couple
thing
thousand other people who keep emailing me.
Let me know when it's ready. It's a really cool, because I'm looking into that. Where do you see the journey of this going? I mean, you're talk about long-term plans. Is there any road that you can point to or kind of hint at of where you see it kind of going in the future, in the next few years?
Yeah, well, I do believe that we're going to see more and more 3D user-generated content. So if you look at something like Instagram or YouTube, largest content platforms in the world, but they're all 2D right now. You look at the Gen Alpha or even the younger people on the side of Gen Z, they grew up playing Roblox and Fortnite, and those were their social communities. These are 3D social networks, basically, and they're not going to go back to a 2D social network. And so I think the 3D industry is going to need, and the gaming industry is going to need to evolve as that audience gets older into more mature 3D content platforms. And so I think we're just seeing the very beginnings of what does a 3D user-generated content platform look like the 3D version of a YouTube, which is going to require a cycle of content and users. So more content equals more users equal more content. That's a wheel that we just need to spin more and more. And so for KitBash, if we can provide those users with assets, that speeds up the amount of time and lowers the barrier of entry for creating 3D content. In terms of beyond assets, because I think KitBash, our mission isn't to build assets. That's just one of the ways in which we enable people. There's a lot of interesting things we're in position to do, and interoperability is kind of first and foremost, and kind of always has been in our mind of we want it to be software agnostic from the beginning. And so we've been working a ton. Now we support every software. We have our artists work in any software they want. We have a singular pipeline, and everything is basically automated to take one file and be able to use it anywhere else. So even in Cargo, when you do get to use it, Tony, you'll download one file and you can open that file in any 3D software or game engine if you're using Cargo.
That's awesome.
So we want to enable other companies and studios to be able to utilize that platform, because if we can take all of the 3D data of the world and be able to expose it anywhere, you could think of something like Ford designing a car in 3D. That same file goes to the manufacturer, same file goes into Forza, same file is available on Roblox, and now we've connected this whole pipe so that we can further expand what's available in this 3D network.
Do you think that that mission will get easier with USD and kind of MaterialX and all these things that are sort of unifying all the materials and assets in one file that kind of rules them all? Is that sort of what you're looking at in the future?
Totally. So we were at Pixar in 2018 when they were showing us their USD pipeline and that they wanted to open it up. And so we've been working with Pixar and then Apple for years on USD development. And it's always been kind of at the core of our pipeline. And now with Cargo, Cargo delivers USD files to everyone, which has kind of opened the doors of more USD files are in use today than ever before, because we have kind of a larger, I guess, network of individual users who are all now using USD without knowing that they're using USD. So
you snuck it in.
It's almost snuck it in, and it's like, hey, this isn't as scary now, right? Yeah.
Great. Yeah, everybody seems to be aligned on like seeing where it's going and trying to jump on the bandwagon. Pipelines are getting updated to support this and stuff. It's pretty exciting because one of the biggest roadblocks is you make something in Cinema 4D and you can't bring it into Maya or whatever, or it's using different render materials and everything. It's just slow and clunky, and it seems like it's I can't wait to render stuff in Nuke. Basically, it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, and when you get outside the visual effects industry, the formats get even crazier. Right? Like you look at architecture and all the BIM data, and how do you use that somewhere else, or industrial design and manufacturing and that data, and how do you get that usable anywhere else? Like I'm sure you guys have been on enough car commercials to have seen the pain of the 3D team when they send the CAD model over. And they're like, shit, like what do we even do with this thing?
Yeah. Have you seen any architects try to use KitBash to make some crazy?
A ton.
Really?
Yeah.
They go crazy.
I think, KitBash does a lot of the real world stuff too. And a lot of the times when you're trying to showcase a design, you just need something to surround the building that you're designing, which is where I think KitBash actually fits best. Is if you have a hero piece, that should be bespoke to the project that you're working on, but not everything needs to be bespoke.
Super cool.
Nice. Now that we're talking about architecture, are there any other industries that you are like interested in exploring in the future, or are you 100% invested in this mission and you feel like fulfilled already, like just with this, just out of interest, I guess?
We're seeing every industry move towards 3D right now. Like almost every industry. Like we work in the music industry, we work in the fashion industry, we work in architecture, we work in automotive. And right now it's just the companies that are on the forefront of technology who are in those industries that are moving to 3D. But that just shows where the trend is. And over the next decade, I think we'll see just about every major industry upended by both AI, but also by 3D content generation.
Kind of crazy. I've been furnishing my apartment, and you can on Amazon click show me what it looks like in my apartment, and you just click it, and it shows you a couch, and you're like, oh shit, this definitely won't fit. And it's super cool because you can take a photo of it and be like, this is kind of what it would look like. And it's been really interesting because I don't remember that feature being there, I don't know, 6 months ago or something. And like you said, it's starting to become everywhere where you see a 3D option at least, seeing something in real life with AR or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, KitBash right now is one of the largest manufacturers of 3D assets out there just by volume. Not anywhere close to the largest. And when you start looking at the bigger players here, like IKEA and Wayfair, it's we don't even come close to the amount of 3D assets and models and textures that they're generating every month. And so, yeah, when you look at other industries, it's there's a lot happening in 3D there. So that's why I like this position is is there another industry I would want to go work in? Honestly, I think this is a really cool one because we get to touch so many different industries.
And you come from the creativity and unexplored worlds and imagination part, not like IKEA, who are basically doing practical things for the day-to-day, right? You're in a completely different position.
Yeah, but when it comes to 3D data pipelines and moving 3D data around, that's where the other side of KitBash, where yes, we have our kits and our worlds where we can be really creative and fantastical. On the 3D data side, it's hey, let's empower other enterprises and companies and industries to be able to reach an audience that maybe they wouldn't have been able to reach, or at least remove the need to have to rebuild the car every time you do a commercial.
Nice.
Has the company always been oriented towards environments, or was there once a decision oh, maybe we should try doing some kind of KitBashed characters, kind of like MetaHuman or something? Or what are your opinions on this kind of software that's coming out where you can just design anybody you want with all kinds of gear?
Yeah, well, it's funny. This week we launched KitBash vehicles, and so that's our new line, and we'll be releasing new vehicles every month, which is really fun. All the genres of vehicles too. We have the real world stuff, but also the cyberpunk, Akira-esque motorcycles, or the fantasy carriages and trebuchets and things like that. Characters we've always stayed away from. I don't know if we always will, but right now, I believe that a character is so specific to the story. It's a really difficult thing to pull off believable 3D characters, and seeing what MetaHuman is doing is unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's that's the solution. And I think for me, I'm if someone else has already got a solution for this, great. We don't need to solve that problem. I want less problems to solve, not more. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think we'll probably stay away from characters as of now, just because I think there's other people who are doing it really well.
I'm imagining a Barbie lineup with 10,000 Barbie accessories in 3D.
Ooh, that'd be nice.
KitBash. But it's pretty cool.
For vehicles, actually, I was at this grocery store the other day, or not the other day, a couple months ago, and they had the side rack with all the Hot Wheels cars. And I took a picture of that and sent it to our team. It was we had been working on vehicles for 2 years. It's it needs to feel like this. Feel like you're getting a Hot Wheels car.
That's so cool.
So we put a lot of thought into how do we, get that emotion across.
You think it's going to bleed into more props and kind of these object, is it just going to be vehicles for now, but maybe a weapons lineup or something like this?
Cargo has a ton of that. So every kit we do has the environment buildings, but we do a ton of props. We're talking 100 to 200 props per kit, and we're putting out two of those types of kits every month. So yeah, if there's a weapon you want, Cargo probably already has that in there.
Check it out.
I see you now have surfboards in the retail store release, but that's just for Cargo, right?
Yep. we did all these interiors, and we're going to keep doing interiors also. And they're a nice excuse for us to brainstorm and think of what are the smaller props that we wouldn't normally build. Like for the surfboard, we did like a skate shop. And so it was like, well, what are all the things that would be inside of a skate shop? And it kind of led us down the path of, oh, we need surfboards. We need the little bindings that are on the back of a skateboard and the wheels and 5 different water bottles and helmets and all of those things. So then we could make sure that when you search for something in cargo, we have it.
G was asking ChatGPT about surfboards, and he was not satisfied with ChatGPT's answer, right? Like,
What?
no, I was like,
Snowboard.
I was like, yeah. Was it snowboards? Like,
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was GPT 3.5. This is slightly different subject.
Oh no, I was just thinking. Sorry, that was super funny.
What did ChatGPT tell you to do, G?
Well, I asked it to cross-reference like 3 different snowboards that I was considering buying because they're on Japanese Mercari, which is like a used product website. And I asked it to cross-reference these 3 snowboards, and it broke them down in a completely incorrect way. Like it said like one surfboard is not surfy at all, but that snowboard was not surfy at all. But that snowboard was designed to be a surfy snowboard. So this ended up, I don't know if this is like their tactic, but it ended up making me buy GPT-4, which is like $20 a month. Then I asked it the same question, and it provided the most accurate, detailed, beautiful breakdown.
It's a great upsell mechanism. We're just going to give you false information unless you pay for it.
Exactly.
And at the end,
I wonder if
at the end, it's like, you might want to try ChatGPT 4 if you want a better answer. It's like every single response in 3.5. You might want to try 4.
I'm just waiting for like CNN to do the same thing. Where they just like, if you want the real news, just subscribe to the page.
CNN 4.0, yeah. But we've been messing with some image generation stuff. Now they have a new thing where you can put in an image and ask it to change it a bit. I haven't played with it, but maybe Adrian's played with it. But it's evolving really fast, I think, these things.
Yeah, it's incredible.
So
and the GPTs, the custom instructions thing they just released, that you can create your own assistant and make it work in the way you want, and then publish it so that others can use it, and it's going in a pretty crazy direction.
Adrian, do you want to share what you told us about how you basically turned ChatGPT into a comedian or something? And you said it was your secret, like how you, I don't know, like this is the chat Siri bot or something.
I might literally just build a custom GPT just to do that because it's so funny. Not sure what's the English term for that, but we have a Spanish word, it's cuñado. So it's like a brother-in-law. And it refers to that person that seems to know all the answers, but all of them are incorrect, and they say like super stupid and like exaggerated things, and you're like, oh god, why am I having dinner with this guy? So not like literally brother-in-law, but like that person, you know. Not sure what's the word in English, but
Chad.
Whatever. If you ask ChatGPT like, please act like that, and do not reveal the joke from the rest of this conversation. And it's like, okay, guys, I'm gonna do it, and then you enable voice chat. And then you give it to your friends. It's really good at doing it. So
you say like pretend to be a know-it-all and pretend like everything I say is stupid and like
and then you ask it like actual questions like how many Wacom tablets should I buy for my artists in the room, and it will like just say something completely random and like, oh, and I have one in my bathroom. It's like, I don't know, it's like super funny, and it's really smart at even at like making poems or stuff like that live. And it's good to use it not seriously sometimes, and yeah.
I wonder if you can give it like a comedian reference that it would maybe like start to generate its
pretend you're Bill Burr and just yell at it all day.
Yeah, it's surprisingly good at that. It's like, yeah, crazy times. And now that they just merged, like you can like upload an image, ask it for information about the image, and to generate an image based on that information about the image, and it's just like into the same chat.
Images making images. I see where this is going.
Not assets.
Skynet.
Yeah.
Not assets.
Skynet.
Oh.
So, Max, were you able to pull any creative inspiration from our Japan trip during 2018, 2019?
All the time, man. All the time. That trip was incredible. It was so good, G never left.
It's so true. A year later, I moved here. So
Wow.
Oh, that's very cool.
Was that your first time going in 2018 or?
That was my first
Me, no.
time. Oh, you'd been?
Yeah, and I think it was Joe Spano's first time out of the country, right?
It was, and that was my favorite part because I think it was like Thanksgiving dinner, and we were talking, and somehow it came up that he had never left North America, and I was like, well, we should go somewhere for New Year's then. And he was like, yeah, I'd love to like get out of the country and see something else. I was like, well, if you've never been out of North America, then we should go to Japan. Like that's just the biggest, change you could ever see. And that was a blast. But I loved seeing Japan, and it was strange for me, but I loved seeing Joe's reaction to everything of like totally different world.
I still remember your words calling me, and the specific words were, Joe's never been out of the country. Let's culture shock the shit out of it.
It's quite a culture shock.
My first thought was come to India, because I was living in Mumbai at the time. And that maybe that would have been a very different experience for sure. But I'm so
glad
that
trip was awesome though.
Yeah, I'm so glad we did what we did.
I have one question that's completely unrelated to everything so far, probably, but I cannot not ask to you because from basically out of self-interest, I think, and probably self-interest for the VFX teachers in the world. I'm a compositing teacher, and one thing that we always miss is having some amazing assets in our shots. Like I have some plates with green screens. I can shoot some really cool stuff to show tracking and all of that. But when it comes to actually showing how to CG composite or how to have some effect simulation, we are working with so much cool stuff at work, but then there's nothing we can actually show. This feels kind of like asking Bill Gates how to install Windows, but I mean, I guess you're in a really good position to like have ideas on how one could, as a compositor or as a not CG generalist that can do everything, source some files or some talent or something in order to have the shot that has some assets that can compose and work on top of. You know what I mean? Is there any ideas that you would have for the teacher?
Yeah, totally. So one of our goals for a long time was how do we make it so that someone who's never used 3D can get up and running and create an image within a day, and just to shorten that learning curve. And so last year we did a challenge called Mission to Minerva, and the idea of this challenge was, we're going to build a kit specifically for a challenge, and the kit will forever be free. And the important thing about forever being free is that schools can use it and know that their students will always have access to it if they create training materials around it. And then we're going to go and create 2 tutorials ourselves, one for Unreal and one for Blender. So both are free softwares. And the tutorial will take you from having never used either software to a final image within 30 minutes. And we released that last year. And then the last part that was more time-based on the challenge was we said, okay, we are going to bring in recruiters from top film and game studios. We had recruiters from ILM, Netflix, CD Projekt Red, Riot Games, and then we had a special guest from NASA because it was a space-themed kind of challenge. So any work that you create and you submit, they're going to look at all of it. So you can get your work in front of one of those recruiters, and then they're going to choose winners, and whoever wins will get a Wacom Cintiq. They'll get an NVIDIA 4080. They'll get access to all of the Gnomon School, and a whole ton, like a whole package of basically like, now you have everything you need to go become a professional in this field. It was a great challenge. We ended up having about 60,000 people come and create Minerva images. And we edited them together. If you go to the KitBash website, on the footer, you'll find a Minerva button. And we edited them together into this like highlight reel. And we even made like a Love, Death, and Robots type of season out of it because there were just so many awesome cinematics. I say all that to say, like, those resources are out there from KitBash, so you can go and Cargo's free, and Minerva's on Cargo if you're on a Windows. Mac is coming. You can get all those free assets, and on our YouTube channel, you can find a full getting started on Blender. It's literally 30 minutes, so now you can start to get your whole layout out there, get your lighting set up your camera, render a couple passes for yourself if you want to do a camera move. Spend a couple hours on that, and then that can be what you use for everything for your compositing training moving forward.
That's amazing.
And we're going to be doing that every year now. So we have another one coming out middle of next year, and so we'll continue to add genres. So if you want to play with compositing techniques outside of sci-fi, we'll have kind of a set of these.
I love this idea of the challenge. It reminds me, and I think I might have seen it on the website too, that there's a YouTuber, I guess he used to work at Corridor Digital. He goes by Punisher, I think. And he does this like 3D challenge every year where it's like, I think it's like 4 seconds or something like that of like a character walking. And he's just like, make a submission of a character walking. It has to be this long. It has to be this type of composition. And he makes like with all the submissions, like a 3-hour video of it switching for different people's artworks and projects, and then they pick winners and they give away prizes and stuff. But it's such a cool idea of having like a constraint where it's not just do something, anything. It's like do this specific thing, but then you have free reign to do whatever you want after that. But it sounds a lot like this kind of challenge.
Totally. And we work with Punisher on all of his challenges. So whenever he'll do a new challenge, we'll make sure there's sets of assets that are available for you for that challenge. So yeah, and that's a fantastic one because he gives you the 3D files with the camera already set up. So you have a good starting place of like, here's a camera move or an animation track that, is going to be working. Yeah, that's another really good one to really hone your compositing skills and get more familiar in 3D with an objective.
Just to make sure, so both these things, I guess, you mean they can be used with a commercial teaching goal in mind as well, because that's really important as well.
Yeah, and Cargo, we do education. We're working with Nomen right now to make sure that all their students have Cargo access, so that if you're in a lighting class, you shouldn't be modeling. Like, here's a bunch of assets to learn lighting, or if you're in a texturing class, here's the models you need and texture those.
Yeah, that's the problem with compositing, right? It's like you're given stuff, and if you don't have the stuff, then you're struggling to composite a nice thing, and everybody falls to the free stuff online. It starts to look a little bit generic, and there's just not a lot of good CG like renders out there. There's plenty of CG that requires you to jump in and dabble and render it out yourself. But yeah, it's quite important too. Have you ever thought about? I heard somebody talking about this the other day of like almost a web browser where you kind of import a camera or you do this thing and you can just export a render. I know it sounds like ridiculous, but it's software agnostic basically, and it's just like a viewport. And you have a 3D scene in like a web browser, and then you just click a button. And it's like, here's our AOVs and here's everything. It sounds like a crazy idea, but actually I don't think it's that impossible to do in the future with like web rendering and everything.
Totally. It's definitely one of the areas we've been looking at a lot is like, there's so much that's changed over these couple of years. And one of the big ones is the fact that we have processing on demand in the cloud. So GPUs in the cloud, even CPUs on the cloud, like all of these things are now available so that, we can have a 3D web viewer. USD also having like USDZ, which is, easy to navigate on a web browser. So I think that's where it's headed. And I think that's super exciting.
Yeah, that's really accessible to everybody. I mean, you don't need to download anything. Yeah. You can just be online somewhere, just on your phone. You're like trolling around.
And you're talking to 3 compositors, so that also probably influenced our interest.
Well, I'm curious though. Like, I know I've been close with matte painting and watching that transition to 3D, and kind of on the peripherals with compositing of Nuke getting more and more 3D capabilities, and then also working in like deep layers basically, and how much of the work that you guys are doing from a day-to-day now is moving towards 3D.
You mean from the point of Nuke being able to do 3D, or
just as your day-to-day as a compositor?
We certainly use a lot of CG, and that includes deep. And so the way a lot of things are, I'm just speaking from my experience, but the way a lot of things are done is you don't want things to be dependent on each other. So if you can render an environment and then do iterations on the character, you want them to be separate renders and then combine everything. Or if you have a smoke fire pass that's all around the character while the animation is changing, that has nothing to do with that layer. It's a way to render everything out and kind of do the deep combination. As far as the Nuke like rendering stuff, I think they're trying to work on it, and it's very dependent on USD and MaterialX, but it's still kind of using the old scanline render right now. Yeah. So it's pretty limited, but with their switch to USD, you can see kind of the door opening where they're definitely trying to make it available. That being said, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to be lighting and texturing and stuff inside a Nuke, but it could be, an additional thing that you maybe do a tweak, or you need a texture with this lighting, or, there's plenty of stuff that we do right now in 3D we import the 3D asset into Nuke, do a projection on it, use some of the, like, you can generate normals and all this kind of stuff. But I do see that it could be a complementary thing, but probably not. It's not going to replace like a katana or anything, I don't think.
I'm seeing though so much potential there, and at least in our case, as we are so like close to virtual production at the same time, we are really linked to Unreal Engine, for example, and just having the Unreal Engine bridge that they developed, now we are suddenly able to have a centralized server that runs the Unreal scene, that we can now just from Nuke place the cameras and render whatever we need from there. And I'm just seeing like so much, but even for nerfs, we can already render them as well through the Unreal bridge, and there's like some things that originally we were not doing in comp, or whoever was comping back then was not doing, and it's like particles and ambient occlusion, some ray trace reflections. There's some stuff that we are able to do now, and we're not even moved into USD stuff yet. I mean, it's already implemented, but the potential it has, I think it's really undervalued at the moment, especially like, basically, if you like place the money going away through the project, then the more you can avoid going back to lighting, back to animation, the more efficient stuff is generally, I guess. And yeah, I think just being able to have a scene that maybe the lighter has worked in some way, but then in compositing, that's where you have the power to go in and ask for an AOV on demand, or tweak some setting that, or even be the lighter there and be in that final stage. I see like so much potential there, even if they're trying to separate the lighting and comp concepts. I just see so much potential in comp to be able to make quick changes that I think it's going to be hard for it to stay separated for long.
Can I ask, Adrian, how does it work? Is it, I know that there's an Unreal viewer. Is it just you have Unreal open on the side and you do a tweak over here on the Unreal and then it updates a Nuke with the AOVs and everything? Or how is it, are you able to tweak it from Nuke? Or like, I don't really know much about how to use it.
Yes, so the way the Unreal Bridge works at the moment is you have one machine running Unreal Engine. It could be probably the same machine, but in our configuration we use a Windows machine for Unreal, a Linux machine for Nuke. They are on the same network. You place the Unreal Reader node, and basically it connects to the IP of the other machine. Unreal Engine just delegates, is like the render delegate. So in Nuke, you just ask it for a render, it renders, and it shows you the image in Nuke. So then you are able to input the camera, and that camera that you have in Nuke asks for the image in Unreal. Or you can use the Unreal camera in Nuke, but then add an axis for an offset, for example, or anything like that. And then you can ask it for cryptomats and give me a bounding box, an overscan, whatever. And all of that is happening in the compositing language. So for me, it feels so much more natural to be there making those tweaks than to ask an Unreal Engine artist, like, give me, a cryptomat. Like, they don't have that same language that we have in some sense. Mm. And that's just what we already have. But the moment you're able to just read USD scenes and be there, and I mean, I don't see any reason for the future not to be able to do stuff and render stuff in Nuke, because it's so much more flexible. Even if a lighter does it in Nuke, that's not the issue, I think. I know.
Yeah, when you zoom out and look at, what's the last couple of years, how far have game engines or real-time rendering come? like ray tracing in real time right now and what GPUs are capable of doing right now. It's like there's, it doesn't really matter even where it's being rendered because USD has data streaming. So, whether or not Nuke is able to render or not, it's just, can you connect to the pipes here? That's what I'm fascinated about, how it's going to affect compositing when you can change a render in real time, in your node tree as you're doing your final compositings and see it with the plate and not have to go back to lighting and animation. And I think virtual production's like, really on the frontier of this right now.
Yeah, and we also, like, for example, in compositing, we have a lot of critical control over placing 2D elements. Like, we are really trained to place many smoke elements through the scene in cards, and basically, if we were just able to work with volumetric files or stuff like that, and have that even just for placing them, and then it gets rendered away, which long term maybe it doesn't even make sense. So you can just have the thing there, right? Or you share the USD scene with a lighter that then goes in and changes stuff. I just see the potential there.
You could render anything in Unreal with the amount of smoke and dust and particles you guys are going to put on top of it anyways.
Forgot glow.
Yes. In chromatic aberration.
Yeah, I mean, the past version or two of Nuke there's been this big push to increase like the USD friendliness and stuff. So I think, as like back to your original question, in terms of like day to day as a compositor, like for me at least, it hasn't changed much. But I think as maybe like as the bigger ship starts turning, as the pipelines start to steer in that direction, we'll probably start seeing compositors using USD a lot more.
Yeah, man, I'm typical shot. I'm always in Nuke 3D pretty much, like either placing card. It's mostly projection stuff. Honestly, Nuke is still really, really powerful at doing projections, more so than even, I don't know, Maya or something. So it's really a leg up there. And once you learn all the kind of secrets of how to like transpose the geo and everything and put it in the origin, put it back and all this kind of stuff, then you can get really powerful projection setups without ever going back to 2D and then back into 3D, and you can kind of get really powerful with it. But yeah, it's still pretty limited at the moment, I think, with the scanline render, but yeah, they're working on it.
I wonder how we would be interacting with 3D right now in Nuke if Nuke's 3D system had always been better. Nuke's projection system has been really good, and we work a lot with projections. Yeah, I don't know.
Like they had made it into Katana, and it's like...
yeah, I mean, maybe if now we have a proper 3D system that can render and do stuff, maybe it takes us in a different direction, maybe not. But if you get that together with real time, that's pretty powerful.
I wanted to ask a kind of a personal question, because I think I speak also with G, that when we both started, I would say that we probably had a pretty big passion for DMP and environments. And we even took a class together, G. Like when we first started out at Luma, we were taking like a matte painting class. It was just something that interested us. But I think there's a choice, or like a fork in the road maybe, where you have to kind of decide whether or not you want to focus on compositing or go down the DMP, the matte painting route. And for me, at least, I was like, okay, I want to focus on compositing. I saw the problem solving kind of a bit more fun, or maybe a bit less effort in the artistic side that I needed to put in. But for somebody who's at that fork in the road and is looking down the DMP, the matte painting path, would you have any recommendations of like how do they get started, and how do they make that switch or dedicate themselves down that path versus falling into comp?
Man,
I have a side story once Max answers that.
I feel like my advice is probably going to be so outdated. Like I made that decision 15 years ago when we didn't have all the resources and the landscape was very different than it is today.
You think it's easier? Yeah, easier today? Like, you think it would be a much easier path to go down? Because back then I felt like it was pretty hard,
I think it's different today. Back then there weren't as many people, but there weren't as many resources. So today, maybe the resources are more accessible, but it also means there's a lot more people who are doing it. So you have to kind of stand out a bit more. And when I see like student work today, I'm like, shit, if that's what student work looked like when I was starting, I would never have gotten a job, you know? So I wish I had better advice to that. I guess the one thing I will say is towards the end of my matte painting career, I did a couple classes online and I had people reach out and ask for me to mentor them. And some of them I did. And the thing I would say, most of them I didn't. And the reason is I would say, send me a new matte painting once a week for 10 weeks. And at the end of the 10 weeks, I'll mentor you. Never had someone send me a painting.
Wow.
One.
Seriously? Wow.
Yeah. And it was one of those things of like, if you're not willing to do that, like, I'll go and give you my all, but you got to give it your all too. And so I think a lot of people say that they want to do it, but when it push comes to shove, are they really willing to put in the time and effort to like actually go and do this every day? There's not a lot of people who will. And so if you really want to do that and you want to make the choice to either become a compositor or a DMP or a concept artist or anything like that, it starts with just sit down and do the work. And can you do the work on a consistent basis with extreme discipline and endurance to continue to do it longer than you think it's going to take to actually start to get paid to do it? I guess that would be my advice.
I think it's great advice. Like, do the work, do the practice, keep doing it, keep producing work. I remember the class that G and I had, like, they'd make us do a concept art or like a SketchUp in the class. Like, they'd be like, here's 2 hours, do something, and then we'll talk about it. And we were like, you know, it's going to look like dog shit and you have no confidence in yourself. And then at the end of the 2 hours, there's something there. And then you're like, I didn't know I could make that at the end of the 2 hours. Like, and the more you did, you could see the power of like repetition, practice, all this kind of
Get
stuff.
your reps in.
Yeah, you got to get the bad paintings out of the way. You got to do a lot of those before you get to the good paintings. So just how do you get through those as quickly as possible, and still want to keep doing it? Because yeah, I look back at the work I did in my first year as a matte painter, and it's embarrassing. It's like, that's what I had to do to get better and to learn.
Do you think that everybody kind of finds their style eventually? Like, I know when you're starting out, you're gonna look at like Dylan Cole or something, and you're gonna find all this inspiration, and you're gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna, take. But then eventually, I guess I feel like this is a craft that people are paying you for, like your style. It's like a very like the name that goes along with the matte painting can be as important as the matte painting itself almost. Do you think you find a style somehow over the years?
It's funny because I was always trying to not have a style to hit any style. I went from Hotel Transylvania over to Iron Man and, then to Clash of Clans and Her. These are things that are just so different. For me, it was just like, this isn't about my style. It's about what does the project need and how do I make sure I can execute on the project. And I think when I started doing personal work, which I didn't do personal work while I was a professional matte painter, it was like I'm painting every day for jobs that I enjoy. But after about 8 years, I took a little sabbatical and did a couple months of doing my own paintings. And at that stage, I was like, okay, I can start to see my style just because when it's up to me, what do I enjoy painting? I like painting these things. I have more fun with these. And I think that's where maybe a style emerges. But that's a personal style. Professionally, even Dylan Cole, like you look at his work, he went from Coca-Cola Happiness Factory, which is super cartoony, to, Maleficent, which is very like graphic, stylized realism, and to Avatar and all these different things. Like he has a very, very wide range of what he can do, and he's trying to do the best painting for the project.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I was torn between comp and matte painting for a while, especially in the beginning of my career. And even like when I'd started at Zoic, I was the agreement was that I would comp and do matte painting. After that gig, you had brought me onto a project, and I think it was for Sony or some. It wasn't like ImageWorks. It was like some other Sony thing. Which, by the way, Tony, Pedro was involved in.
Oh, the man, one of the best map painters that that we both know. Yeah, it's our compositing teacher in university, Pedro Flores.
Our mentor, basically.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, like I think I'd stayed at your house for like 2 nights, and we were just trying to churn out this map painting project, and it was such a humbling experience for me, because I realized even then, like there's levels to this shit, and like the level between us in matte painting was like such a big gap. I think after that, I was like, I could either diligently put a whole lot of time into trying to catch up to Maxx in matte painting, or just maybe do this comfort zone of compositing that I've established. And I
Just put
went
the A
that
over
way.
the B and
Yeah, and the glow.
So don't forget the grain, blur and grain. Yes.
I remember
Yeah,
that. It was a PlayStation commercial. I remember that one very, very vividly because of the amount of hours that we spent on that. It's I appreciate the compliment there, but I'll flip it right back around of like, I've had the privilege of getting to work with some of the best compositors in the world. And when you see what a compositor is able to do with an image, a lot of my paintings, I look at, I'm like, I don't know about this one. And then you put it in the hands of, G or our friend Joe or something. It's like, you guys made that thing look friggin' magical. Like, you guys are covering my ass big here constantly. And so much of the work that goes up on screen, it's like, I think if someone had seen the painting, they would have been like, it's an okay painting. And then they see your comp and go, oh, that looks epic.
I did have a question revolving that. You've probably worked with a lot of compers and passing that stuff on, and it's sort of like your kind of like your baby, and you're like passing it, like, please take care of this thing that I worked so hard on. Do you have any pet peeves that compers are doing that you wish they would stop doing, or just kind of like maybe look at this more, or do this a little better, or what do you think? How do you think a comper can take your work and do it justice, I guess?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to choose who I work with, right? It's because like my work in the hands of a great comper becomes 10 times better. In the hands of a bad compositor, all of a sudden like looks bad, and I don't want to tell anyone I did it. I think great compositors have great eyes, and so they see the things that can enhance an image, can enhance a painting, and make it work with the shot. I try to look for those people who are going to plus it and not try to hide behind a bunch of techniques. And I think keeping it simple is usually best. Like, you see those comps where it's like, why do you have 300 elements in here? Now we're just looking at a muddy gray shot here. And I think that's what I've noticed with like junior compositors. A lot of the times they kind of get lost in like the complexity of their script. And I see the same thing in matte painting of like people get lost in the complexity of their Photoshop file. Like a great matte painting doesn't need 5,000 layers. Like it can be simple as long as it tells the story well and has a good composition and good color palette and lighting. So yeah, I would say like, don't overthink it. Like think about what the shot needs, not what you think the nuke script needs. And also like work with the matte painter a little bit. Like the communication was always key. Like G and I, whenever we do projects together, like we would talk about why are we trying to do the things that we're doing? Let's be on the same page about what the shot is or what the project is. And then when I, have a cool sunset painting, he doesn't make it all warm because we've talked about like, hey, this is kind of a solemn mood or whatever it is. Like we want the moonlight to really hit the rim on this. And so, he's not hiding or obfuscating these things. And I'm also delivering a painting in a way that he can work easily with and not making his life a living hell. So I think a lot of it's just the communication.
Communication, yeah.
Nice.
Good stuff.
Man, it feels like a real privilege to talk to someone like you, and basically the guests we're having. It's like we're learning so much from all of you, and yeah, it's pretty crazy.
You guys are just making this a blush fest for me.
Yeah, we're like in our own bubble of VFX, and basically there's so much more insight that people have, and basically just recording this is like such a good excuse to basically steal your your inspiration.
Yeah, I mean, you are pretty like for me, like knowing you from the past, like you're pretty inspirational to see. Like, every time I hear KitBash in the wild say, I'm like, oh yeah, Max is doing that, and you know, like at that fork in the road that I was mentioning, where you're like, oh, should I do this or this? Like you're so far down that path that I once, you know, had a struggle of like, oh, which one should I do? And it's just really cool to see someone at like, you know, the top of their game down that path that you kind of wish you had went down, or it's cool to imagine someone having gone down that and been so, I don't know, successful with all that stuff. And it's really cool.
Well, thank you. But I very much see myself at the bottom of a different mountain.
I guess all perspective, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, and how much there still is to learn and improve and get better at. And, you know, I'm looking at, you know, people who do this so friggin' well, and people who do any craft so well. You know, I could say the same thing for all of you, and how much you guys have trained your eyes, and, you know, the incredible projects that you guys are doing every day that I know that 15 years ago, if I told you guys the movies you'd be working on, you'd be like, no way. So I right back at you. It's awesome to be on this journey, and also I don't think there is a top of this.
Yeah, always a journey.
So, are there any upcoming KitBash releases you'd like to talk about?
Vehicles just launched this week, so that's kind of a big one. We'll have new vehicles kits every month. Cargo this year, new challenge next year.
Mac coming soon.
Mac coming soon. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, not. I don't think there are like big things. I think for us, it's the continuous things. It's every week we have something coming out, and I think that's it makes it so there isn't like one giant release or anything. It's just there's always new stuff coming.
You're applying the same logic to the company that you did to yourself. Like just keep moving, keep doing it day to day. It's really, really cool. Good approach to running it like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
go for it.
Just going to say, just for anybody listening, if you happen to live under a rock, just make sure you check out KitBash3D.com. Check out all the epic kits I have on there. And my personal favorite, Gaia. Not to copy off you, but Gaia is awesome. And Cyberpunk. Those are fire.
I like some of the medieval ones. I'm a big fan of like Game of Thrones and stuff, and all those medieval kind of rock castles and stuff. Oh, that's sick.
Medieval Siege has like, I don't know what it was. They gave us the stat sheet when they delivered the kit, and it was like 10,000 arrows stuck into the different bridges and walls and stuff.
It's awesome.
Nice.
Well, thanks for the inspiration.
Dude, it's been a... Was that Tony?
I said thanks for the inspiration and being on the show. It's been a really interesting one from different perspectives. It's great hearing from you again and seeing you on your path.
Well, it's great to see you again, Tony. It's been a while, and it's always a pleasure to get to see you. I'm excited to run around Japan with you again soon.
I'm back soon, bro.
And Adrian, it's great to meet you. Thank you for all the thoughtful questions.
Yeah, I mean, just thank you for all the thoughtful answers. That was really, really nice.
Well, awesome. We'll wrap this up now. So, yeah, once again, Max, thanks so much. And everybody, I'm sure you've drawn inspiration from this awesome conversation we've had. So, awesome. Thank you very much. And until next time.
Thanks.